Hello, Yeri. So today we're going to be looking at the dropping of the atom bomb. That's the title, your learning outcomes, to know the key facts surrounding the dropping of the A-bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, to use sources to analyse possible reasons for the US action and decide which motive seems the most likely, to weigh up, which means evaluate, arguments for and against the dropping of the bombs through research and debate, to reach a final judgment on whether or not the USA did the right thing. So if you want to write that title and those learning outcomes, you can put the video on pause. I am going to give it a few seconds before moving on. Okay, so we're going to move on now. So what happened? So I'm just going to run through why the atomic bomb was dropped. So on the 7th of May 1945, Germany surrendered to the Allies, ending the Second World War in Europe. However, the war in the Pacific continued, so the Pacific is mainly in Asia. Japan refused to surrender to the USA, and it seemed that America would have to invade. The Japanese army was sworn to fight to the death. So if you've heard this idea of kamikaze, those would be the Japanese pilots who would fly their planes into either other planes or targets and kill themselves. That would be the idea of kamikazeing, fighting to the death. Their culture did not respect surrender, encouraging even women and children to fight to the end. America did not want to face huge casualties. On the 16th of July 1945, the American President Truman received the news that America had successfully exploded a new type of weapon, the atomic bomb. This was like no other weapon that had ever been used. Truman took the decision to use the atomic bomb against Japan. On the 6th of August, an American B-29 bomber named the Enola Gay dropped the world's first deployed atomic bomb on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. 80,000 people died instantly. And when we say instantly, we literally mean instantly. They were just disintegrated. 3 days later, a second atomic bomb was dropped on Nagasaki, killing 40,000 people. On the 15th of August, Japan's Emperor Hirohito announced the country's unconditional surrender, citing a new and most cruel bomb in his radio broadcast. So your first task, year 8. What were the effects of the A-bomb? So these are eyewitness accounts, and they say more than statistics such as numbers ever could. What I want you to do is think of 10 adjectives to describe the effects of the A-bomb. If you're not sure what an adjective is, it's a describing word. So such as, I think that the A-bomb's effects were very horrible. You'd be describing something. So have a look at these sources. I'm going to read them out as well. A priest found about 20 men in the bushes. They were all in the same nightmarish state. Their faces burned, their eye sockets hollow. The fluid from their melted eyes had run down their cheeks. Their mouths were mere swollen, pus-covered wounds, which they could not bear to stretch enough to sip from the spout of a teapot. He got a large piece of grass and used this to make a straw so that they could drink water. So again, you're thinking of adjectives. When you read this, how can you describe the effects? The skin was burned off some of them and was hanging from their hands and from their chins. Survivors began to suffer from a strange illness. It consisted of vomiting, loss of appetite, diarrhea with large amounts of blood, purple spots on the skin, bleeding from the mouth, loss of hair, and usually death. So just again, year 8, adjectives. Think how you can describe the effects of the A-bomb using these eyewitness accounts. And again, if you want to put the video on pause while you do that. Okay, so I think we can move on now. Your second task, here are 4 possible reasons as to why the USA decided to drop the A bomb. So these are kind of reasons that historians have argued is why America did this to Japan, because it seems so horrible, so they have to think about why it happened. So number 1, the American casualties would be heavy if the USA did not drop the bomb. Number 2, the USA wanted to test its expensive new weapon. Number 3, the USA wanted the USSR, that's the Soviet Union, and if you don't know what the Soviet Union is, it's modern day Russia. So these are the communists. So if you remember your Churchill, these are the people that Winston Churchill made an alliance with, but they were communist, and America and the USSR would eventually, have a lot of tension between them after World War II. So I'll read that one again. The USA wanted the USSR to see how powerful it was. The USA wanted to teach the Japanese a lesson. So your task is to rank these from the most morally justifiable to the least morally justifiable. And when we say morally justifiable, it's which one do you think is the most moral? So is the most correct in a moral sense. And then least moral would be the one that you think is not moral at all, like it's bad, it's genuinely an evil thing to do. So 1 is going to be the least evil, and then 4 is going to be the most evil. So I'll just give you a few seconds. Again, if you want to put the video on pause before I carry on. So what you're going to do next, you're going to study a collection of sources, and then you're going to make a copy of this table. So it should say source, reasons suggested, and then in brackets 1 to 4, evidence from the source. So from the sources we're going to look at, you need to figure out which of the 4 reasons listed do you think seems the most likely reason and why. So we will go through 1 together so you can kind of think about this. So source 1, this is by a recent historian. By 1945, the Americans didn't trust Russia and wanted to show them that they were a powerful country which was not to be crossed. They also knew that the Russians would soon be helping them with the war in Japan. The US didn't want Russia to have any say over what would happen to Japan after the war, so they needed a quick victory. So source 1 would be the reason, they wanted to show the USSR, because it's that kind of contest between the Americans and the Russians. It doesn't really have anything to do with Japan, it's trying to show the USSR that they're a powerful country. So that would be source 1. And we can prove this by saying that the Americans wanted to show them they were a powerful country. They didn't want the Russians to get involved in Japan because then the Russians could have a say over what happens with Japan. All these different kinds of reasons. So I'm going to read through the rest of these sources, and then it's going to be up to you to write down what you think. So source 2, this is a British cartoon published in 1945. The caption, it's a bit hard to read, so we've copied it out. Japan was seeking peace before the first atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, according to documents just leaked to the US press. So what this is saying is that the Japanese were actually looking for peace, and perhaps the idea that they aren't going to stop wasn't actually true. So which reason do you think that ties into? An interview with the American politician 20 years later. So this is an interview with an American politician 20 years after the dropping. So you're looking at about 1965. We were talking about the people who hadn't hesitated at Pearl Harbor to make a sneak attack, destroying not only ships, but the lives of many American sailors. So again, you're thinking about why this American politician is saying this. What would the reason he is giving be for the dropping of the atomic bomb? This is source 4. This is from the memoirs of Harry Truman, who was the president who decided to drop the atomic bomb. So this is what he had to say. All of us realized the fighting would be fierce and the loss of life heavy. General Marshall told me it might cost 500,000 American lives. So have a think about what Harry Truman thought. So I'm just going to pause here so you can consider those 4 sources before I move on. Okay, so let's look at the last 3 sources. So source 5 was written by the American Secretary for War in 1947. The total strength of the Japanese army was about 5 million men. There were 5,000 suicide aircraft, so that would be your kamikaze pilots, belonging to a race that would fight to the death. So really interesting comparison there with source 2. So have a think on that one. So source 6, a speech by the Japanese Prime Minister during World War II. So this is the Japanese side, so this is what they thought. I expect the 100 million people of Japan to protect the emperor and Japan from the attacker. So remember, they're saying this during World War II, so it's going to be before the atomic bomb was dropped. So what can we take from what the Prime Minister is saying? So source 7, this is from a booklet published by an anti-atomic bomb organization in 1985. So quite a long time after the atomic bomb was dropped, you had a lot of people who were looking at, disarming atomic weapons. Nuclear weapons were trying to be disarmed. The head engineer of the A-bomb project was desperate to see it in action before the end of the war. The bomb had cost 2,000 million to make. And I'm not sure how much that is actually. Is that 2 billion? If you're better at maths, you can probably figure that out. It would have been difficult to justify not using it after such a huge amount of money had been spent. So go back to those 4 reasons. What are they trying to say here? And again, I'll pause. If you want to put the video on pause, please do so. Filling out those source tables. So last one, and this is going to be your plenary. From these sources, which of the 4 reasons listed do you think seem the most likely reason and why? So I'll go through those 4 reasons again. You're just going to write a short paragraph saying which do you think is the most likely. So American casualties would be heavy if the USA did not drop the bomb. That's one reason you can talk about. The USA wanted to test its expensive new weapon. The USA wanted the USSR to see how powerful it was. Remember, USSR, that's Russia. The USA wanted to teach the Japanese a lesson. So one of those 4 reasons, you're going to pick which one you think is the most likely and why. Okay, year 8. So I'm going to stop recording now. I hope you've learned something. I think it's a very interesting topic. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope to see you soon.